Hi, I'm Patricia Allingham Carlson, and this is my video, Lake Galena II. I had just completed a painting that I called Lake Galena I, and it was based on a beautiful, beautiful place at a park near me. The place is called Peace Valley. I had come upon a fabulous photograph by a photographer named Leah Gilboa Hill, and I asked for permission to paint it, and she granted it. After painting the first larger painting, I decided to do a smaller version. This one is only about 5 inches by 7 inches, but I just wasn't done exploring that beautiful sky and the reflections in the water. So I decided to do it again. I hope you'll enjoy it. Now let's paint. Getting started, I put down 2 strips of paper to block off an area in between so I could do some masking. I'm applying the masking with a toothbrush. And that means that masking fluid got all over my hands. Well, anyway, it dried, and I began applying masking for the areas that I wanted very light or pure white in the sky. I'm using the end of my paintbrush because I found it very difficult to get masking fluid out of natural hair of a paintbrush. Perhaps I need to get some good synthetic brushes that are coarse that I can get the masking fluid out of a little easier. For right now, I'm using the end of the brush. I apply the masking, and once it's dry, I wet down the sky. I'm using a wash brush for this to apply the water evenly and consistently throughout the sky. And once it's on, the color begins. Cadmium yellow begins the paint, and then some quin red. Quinacridone, I believe is how you pronounce it, but we'll call it quin. There's some permanent pink on the left side as well. What I wanted was for that red and pink to mix with the cadmium yellow and give me a lovely orange while keeping an area of pure yellow in between. Next, I come in with some purple lake and some quin violet. At this point, at the top, I'm mixing in indigo and Payne's gray. And the same for the clouds going across the brilliant sunrise colors. Can you see how I continue to really lay in the color over and over again? I'm floating it right into the wet paint. To get really brilliant colors, washes can be applied and let to dry and then reapplied. Or you can also try just loading brilliant colors in over and over again onto the wet paper. And that's what I'm attempting here because I want the paint to float freely and loose. I'm coming in with some cobalt blue at this point. For the one little area of water that it's truly a lovely blue, and that's where I applied the masking fluid. From there, the water goes into wild reflections. Time has gone by, and I'm removing the masking fluid with a clean rag. In this case, that seems to be working pretty well. And with that done, I wet down the water area with a wash brush. And I'm mirroring the colors that I applied to the sky. The yellow, the red, letting them mix, and some of that permanent pink. I put the colors down and then I layer in right on top of that wet paint some more color, concentrated color. It's not so concentrated as to be opaque. It is still transparent. Next is my mixture of quin, violet, and indigo. And when I want to get very dark, I'm adding some Payne's Gray. The darkness in these reflections is part of what made the painting and the photograph very dramatic in the first place. But what also adds to the drama is when I include the islands and the distant shores and the silhouettes of the trees and weeds. As I'm painting in the reflections, you see that I'm using very horizontal strokes, back and forth and back and forth, because there are little ripples in the water, obviously. I've also masked in the masking fluid in a back and forth type of method. And now I'm applying the distant shoreline and the distant shore jutting out into the water. And in the middle of it all, there's a little flash of very brilliant sunset showing into that blue. I'm refining and defining the tops of the trees along this little area of land. And when that's dry, I'm removing the masking fluid from the water. This time I'm using an eraser to remove it. Now comes the refining work. That was the fun part. This is the part where I have to get everything looking right in the water with the ripples going across, softening out the areas of masking with a damp brush, and making the reflections look logical according to what's in the sky. That was the reflection of the land coming into the water. And moving back to the sky, I now begin with my damp brush to carefully blend along the edges of all those white areas. In some cases, I paint a little dampness onto painted areas and remove a little paint to put some streaks of clouds into where it was a previously just painted plain area. And then along each white area with a damp brush and softening the edges. This takes a lot of patience, but it's very important if you want to have soft edges and cloud vapor as opposed to a hard edge. For me, a sky needed to be soft. Between each separate blending, I wash the brush with water and dry off the extra water with a paper towel. If you don't continually clean your brush, you'll just be dragging more paint into the areas that you want kept white. So it's blend and soften, rinse your brush, dry your brush, and using a damp brush, come back and do it again. This small series of paintings taught me more about blending whites than anything I've done in all the years I've been painting. It was repetitious and required a lot of patience, but it was also very relaxing because the colors were so pretty in the sky, in the photograph that my photographer reference took. So just trying to mimic nature was a real joy in painting this series. After working for quite a while with the sky, I began to blend the hard masked edges of the water. And it did almost become a bit of a meditation of blending and reflecting colors and feeling how the water would feel as it went across, mirroring the gorgeous sky. As I blend in some places, I add a little more color and soften it with water, of course. When I'm somewhat satisfied with the water, I begin to work on the land that juts out into the water. I mix up some indigo, some Payne's gray, and some purple lake and make a deep, deep color that's not black. And then I begin painting some weeds and some grasses and small trees coming up in silhouette. Observing photographs really closely to look at the silhouettes against the bright sunsets and sunrises that I've been painting. I noticed that as the weeds or trees get higher into the sky, they begin to change color and light up a little bit. So they're no longer just solid dark, but as I get to the edges, they take on some of the sunrise colors. Some deep alizarin crimsons can be added, or some deep burgundies or purples. And as you're moving up into the sky, of course, those little branches and those little pieces of grass get thinner and thinner and thinner and lighter. But it's fun to make them be a color and taking on the colors of the sunset. And more blending as I go. I'm darkening that small mass of land and working on the small little branches that go up into the sky. The initial layer of color that I put on was not dark enough, and they faded, and so I darken each one of them, and then I reflect them into the water. Water reflections have to be handled with a different kind of touch because ripples can break up the reflection so it's not perfect anymore. So it can start and stop, it can wiggle. You have to look at your reference, whether it's real or a photograph, and see what your reflection's doing so you can try to get it right. Now I know I want to put in a tree. So I go outside and get myself a branch and find something that I sort of like. So I'm actually tracing the branch with the brush as it's laying right on my surface. I have a lot of fun doing that, actually. Once I have the shape on that I like, I'll work on making it thicker and enhancing the tree to add some more branches and make it more interesting looking. At this point, I'm looking at another reference photo of a young sapling growing on the shore. You know, when you're copying a tree, you don't have to draw every branch that you see. Nor do you have to draw every branch the way it actually looks. If you think you can make it look better by going in a different direction, then that's what you should do. For this painting, I decided I was going to add a small blue heron standing close to the shoreline. So I'm lightly sketching him in with the brush in a Payne's gray color that's very washed out. Once I'm satisfied with this little silhouette, I'll make it darker. A blue heron is a wading bird. They wade along the edge of the shallows and reach down and do fishing. Here I'm putting on a couple more branches to see what would look right. And they aren't real branches, they're pieces of sticks. But something was needed right there, and that worked for an idea for me. Now I'm going back over the branches with some alizarin crimson and some purples, and showing some of the glow of the sunrise on these little branches as well, and making them darker at the same time. I'll also go back along the main trunk of the tree with a damp brush and soften the whole thing so it doesn't look quite so hard and artificial. A lot of tweaking. Here's my pen. I'm signing the painting and it is done. I hope you enjoyed my video, Lake Galena II, and I hope you learned something from it. It'd be great if you'd hit a thumbs up and ring the bell in the links below. Then you won't miss any future videos. I also have some links below to other aspects of my art, like my Facebook art page, my blog, products I like to use, and art products that I have listed for sale, such as prints and cell phone cases and shower curtains, all on my FAA art page. Have you ever wanted to paint a sunrise or a sunset? Have you done it? I hope you have fun painting clouds, and I'll see you next video.